We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, good morning. Or it's actually afternoon now. It's already noon here on the West Coast. So for most people in the States anyway, it's definitely afternoon. So I had this thought process because one of my rituals is I get up on Sunday and I watch the news, or I, watch my version of the news. I kind of click through emails that I get, be they from, certain reporters like Matt Taibbi or Lee Fong, Seymour Hersh. And then I'll kind of browse through YouTube and watch, a lot of what YouTube throws at me based on my watch history. So I thought, you know what? I don't see a lot of cats doing anything on Sunday mornings. Due Dissidence does a show later in the evening on Sundays. But I don't see a lot of people doing anything Sunday morning. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a Sunday morning stream and just have my coffee and go through some news items with y'all just on live stream. Since I'm doing it anyway, I might as well just turn on my computer and live stream it, was my thought process. So that's what this is. So welcome to the pilot episode of Sunday Morning Politics Coffee, whatever you want to call it. This is my mindless self-indulgence coffee cup here. And if you know, you know, mindless self-indulgence. My skills here are terrible. But it says, I like my coffee black just like my metal. So this was a gift from a good friend. And I'm one of those people who won't drink out of plastic cups because of the chemicals, this chemical seepage. I try to keep it to ceramic or metal coffee cups. But let's dive right into it. I think one of the first things I wanted to talk a little bit about is post-duopoly, post-partisanism, excuse me. And it occurred to me today in listening to a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about now about Russell Brand and just what's going on with censorship in general, that the left and right terminology is so meaningless, and you have to at this point. I mean, I've always done this anyway, but you really have to look at issues on a case-by-case basis, because I came into politics, and I've said this a million times, through the Iraq War and through opposition to the Iraq War. And back then it was the left who opposed war. Now the opposite is the truth. Now, because it's a different administration, it's Ukraine and Joe Biden's in charge. Now it's the right that's opposed to war in Ukraine. And so when I look at these issues, it's the same thing with censorship. When I was into politics, it was the right wingers who were trying to, prevent gay marriage and stop people from reading things they didn't agree with and stop artists from expressing themselves because of their religious values. Now it's the technocratic left censoring people based on their own moral compasses and what they believe is right and wrong. It's not religiously based, but it's the same thing, And so I've always been one of those people who try to look at things on an issues basis, and it's like, who's closest aligned with me on this particular issue? Because if you do it any other way, you end up with a situation like Russell Brand, where now it's like people can look at the issues that Russell backed and say, oh wow, this guy, everything that he said has been discredited because he's a sex offender now, and it's just if you have consistency, if you have a consistency on actual, issues, and you're not just part of a tribe, it's pretty clear, which path to take on all of these issues. And it doesn't really matter what the right thinks about other things when they're with us on, something like censorship. And so I was watching this morning Jimmy Dore again, and just to heap praise on Jimmy Dore, I thought about this again this morning. You got to give the guy credit because first of all, he's doing what he wants to do in the sense that he's out doing comedy shows and interacting directly with people. And then he's got Craig and Kurt back in the studio doing the news items. And I think Jimmy's a genius for that in the sense that he was able to build his reputation and his of integrity through his YouTube broadcasts. But I can tell that he really adores stand up and being directly interfacing with an audience. I mean, he's said it before on his shows. And so what he's done is he's having his cake and eating it too, in the sense that he's giving and it's such a beautiful thing too, because he's also platforming people who I would not otherwise have known about, like Max Blumenthal and Aaron Matei, who guest hosted before, and now Craig. And so he's giving these guys, these like up and coming kind of YouTubers who are doing similar political content to what he's doing, or in some ways breaking stories that he's covering. He's giving them an audience. He's like letting them have his audience, which I think is very cool of him to do. So in a lot of ways, he's helping the movement from two ends. He's out there. He's helping his political, spread his political values of, post-partisanism and unity among the populace left and right. He's out there doing it, the groundwork himself, going from town to town doing these shows. And then he still has, someone like Craig from the Convo Couch back on the show in the studio, putting out content. And at the same time, he's elevating someone like Craig, giving Craig a bigger audience. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I want to give him a lot of credit for it. But I also think that the conversation that they had this morning, that he and that Craig and Kim, well, it wasn't this morning, it was Friday, I believe, but the clip I saw this morning, is one of they have some of the best commentary. I think Kim has some of the best commentary. Well, here we go. I queued up the wrong clip. I think that Kim has some of the best commentary I've seen on the Russell Brand thing. A, because she's a woman, and B, because of the way that the things that she points out in this piece are just so on point. So I'm going to try not to show the whole thing, obviously. I don't want to just be like the Jimmy Dore recap show. Is there? Do you guys want to know what that one simple vision hack is? Let's talk about that for a second, actually, before we go on to this. Since this is Sunday morning coffee and there are no rules, this is actually interesting. I worked with a yoga professional a few years ago in an office context, and she taught us how to exercise our eyes. That's the vision hack I would talk about. You don't need any kind of drugs. You don't need, and if you watch like Huberman or some of these guys that talk about health stuff, they'll tell you a lot of our vision problems come from us constantly looking at screens and never like going outside and like looking at a full horizon. So I've heard Huberman say that even just going outside and going for a walk and like looking at the sky is really good for your eyes, because you're always in this close range thing where you're looking at a screen on your phone, or you're looking at a TV screen or a computer screen. This is some really good black Colombian coffee. I stopped putting anything in my coffee, and that has definitely helped my health quite a bit. I don't know if you can see it in my face, a little bit of the weight loss, but I saw some clips of me on stream a couple from like 6 months ago, and I was like, you're getting a little bit of that turkey neck there, Grimy. So let's talk about this clip here. Let me kind of queue up to a point where how long is it? It's a half-hour clip. I'm not making any rules. I'm saying forget about it. Let's just watch it and talk about it. And let's go like this. Let's do this. Let's go to
The Gray Zone wrote some stuff the other day. Intel linked UK official pushing censorship of Russell Brand. We kind of talked about this the other day. This is the first time that we know of which a platform suspended somebody, not for the content they put on online, but for their behavior and their actions offline. Alleged. You're right. Alleged actions offline. Well, I mean, in the Court of Public Appeals, according to the ruling class, he's guilty. And that's why they were able to 86 him. Kim, what are your initial thoughts right away as far as YouTube demonetizing him? I mean, I know it wasn't surprising to any of us over here, but your initial thoughts.
They didn't demonetize him.
Yeah.
They're making the money on it. They're just not giving it to him.
Yes. They're still running ads.
It is monetized.
Yes.
They're just not sharing the profits they're making off this terrible allegation man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point that Kurt just made. But also, I think there is evidence that YouTube is being self-righteous enough that they did take the monetization off. So there's no ads running on it whatsoever. But it's an odd jump to make, because if he's really guilty, they could deplatform him altogether, or they would try to. But I think the point that Kim makes here that is a great point is that why people shouldn't be held accountable for actions outside of that. Like these platforms have a responsibility, obviously, to some degree, to police content that's on their platform. But when a person does something independent completely of that platform and content, like the accusations against Russell Brand have nothing to do with the content he makes, right? Like if Russell Brand had a channel like about how to rape or something, then it would be a different, here's how you rape, like here's how to get in, it's like that's not the content that he's doing, right? He's like, hello folks, hello Awakening Mondays, today we're going to talk about different ways to rape people. Like, that would be, we're going to demonetize that, but that's not what he's talking about. He's actually talking about different ways that the establishment is raping people. And it's real telling that when he went on Bill Maher, he was talking about BlackRock and State Street and all these firms that own everything. He kind of pointed out how MSNBC and Fox and CNN all have ownership stakes from these firms. So they all kind of serve the same masters at the end of the day. And that kind of, you could just see a bunch of guys like what's his name from The Simpsons, Mr. Burns, like in the back room. Excellent. Yes, Smithers. How do we get rid of Mr. Brand? He is exposing our game on public television. And the guy has a massive audience, but I digress. Let's listen to Kim. She has much more insightful things to say than I do.
They're not deplatforming him. I mean, it's completely for them from allegations, for somebody to just be able to make an accusation against you. And then they say, okay, well, for one, there's no actual investigation that I know of happening. So it's not like police are involved. These women didn't go to the police.
He wasn't arrested.
He wasn't arrested. They didn't go to the police. These women didn't even come forward. These journalists went and found all of these women.
That's the other thing. No one came forward. It's very apparent immediately.
Yeah, this news organization went around asking hundreds of women about their experiences with Russell Brand. They happened to find 4 that had some stories, and they wrote this up in a media piece. And now he's losing his livelihood over accusations, and there's no police investigation. He hasn't had due process. There's been no trial, no jury. And even if he is guilty, honestly, he should still be allowed to make money. His YouTube channel has nothing to do. He's not like promoting.
You're not allowed to earn a living
once you're a convict of some
your
kind.
Innocence, and even then,
even if you're guilty, you should still be allowed to earn a living. I mean, we have people that they're convicted of crimes. They just get probation. They keep their jobs.
Yeah.
They're able to have jobs and livelihoods. I mean, if it has nothing to do, it's not like he's on the platform using it to commit crime. It's one thing if you're using the platform to commit crime.
Yeah.
But it's another thing if you're just making a living. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Even if he's guilty, even if he's found guilty in a court of law, if they don't want him to make money, put him in jail. Yeah. That's how you do that. That's how you punish people. But then when they're out of jail, you have to allow them the right to make money. And they're not. I mean, this is insane. It's insane that an accusation alone with no police investigation, nothing, could actually cost you
Well,
your
for
livelihood.
some people, I mean, some people know that's not enough. We'll ignore it. You know, like the president of the United States.
Right, exactly.
Shower his 14-year-old daughter. according to-
Allegedly,
No,
she
maybe
could have
she
just
lied
wrote that in
to-
the diary.
Yeah, she might have lied to her diary.
Yeah, she.
And we know that's real because they sent the Secret Service or FBI to kick down.
And Tara Reid's in Russia. She's got to hide on
Yeah,
out
so
over there.
Kerr has a great point. We know it's real because they sent the FBI to go after James O'Keefe over it. And what's wild about what's going on right now is, I've said this before, but I never thought that when Idiocracy came to America, it would be the liberals that were the knuckle draggers, the dummies, reciting the slogans like, "Oh, gotta get boosted. Vaccines are what plants crave." You know, that kind of stuff. It's insane. Anyway, let's keep going.
It's real weird how we pick and choose. Secondly, it's always sexual misconduct now. That's a real broad term.
Yeah.
Where I don't know what the hell it means. It seems to mean whatever you want in the moment if you don't like the person.
Meanwhile, Cardi B still has her YouTube channel, 10 million people, and she's admitted to drugging
guys up while she was a stripper
and stealing their money. Yeah, I mean, that's the that's the world we live in, where it's celebrated. You go, girl. And you know, on the other side, and I'm not even saying, this is the thing about the Russell Brand accusations, is I think this is the most telling aspect of them, is the incidents supposedly occurred between, I think they said 2009, 2013. And the Me Too movement happened in 2017, the real like big wave of it. Excuse me. The real big wave of the Me Too movement occurred in 2017, and it started with Alyssa Milano, right? And so if you're looking at a timeline here, those initial allegations happened before the Me Too movement, and so they should have surfaced when all these other accusations surfaced at that time, right? Like that was a time when a lot of people came forward, and it was kind of like an upswell of support for people who had unreported sexual, assault claims. And so at that time, you would think these people would come forward with these claims if they were serious claims. And as Kim said, these reporters went around and fished these claims up. So I just want to say, I think that what's going on here with Russell Brand is actually a good thing in the long run. I mean, it's not good for him now, and I hope that everything pans out for him because he's got a family. He has a wife and kids. And he seems like a genuinely good person. But I think the fact that someone as high profile as him is being smeared like this into this magnitude at this level of ridiculousness is good in the sense that people are seeing it. So I think people who might not otherwise have admitted that this kind of stuff happens are now being forced to go, oh, wow, that's just a little suspicious that now this guy has, this platform and this big audience, this growing audience independently. And all of a sudden there's reporters fishing for smears and piecing together these dramatic documentaries like they did with Michael Jackson with the background music. And they're like, that's when, it's advertising and manipulation. And that's a world I come from. So that's a world that I'm very skeptical of. It's like, when it doesn't matter what I see, I'm like, what the fuck is this person trying to sell me? Right. Anyway, let's keep listening because this is a really good conversation about this.
Money.
I don't think she was about masking up, was she?
No,
didn't she try to spread the word?
Well, she talked about her. I don't want to talk about her friends
or the effective vaccine. I'd never do.
What do you think though, Kim? To the point where YouTube goes, it's a private entity. We can do what we want. It's up to us. We don't have to monetize you if we don't want to. What do you say to that? Because this is a subject that's very personal to me. My YouTube channel, Combo Couch.
You don't get to monetize steal the person's money.
Yeah.
If it's such an immoral thing.
Okay, so this argument right here. Let's talk about this. I want to talk about this for a second. The argument that it's a private company, so they don't have to be, they're not accountable to anyone other than themselves because they're a private company. I just want to make a point here. Give me just a second because this is an on-the-fly stream. I didn't put together any content for this, but dun, 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 dun. Wow. So what I wanted to look for, here we go. This is what I wanted to find. And I had to go to DuckDuckGo for this headline. And I don't even know how credible this source is. But let's look at this. So in regards to the argument that, hey, private companies aren't accountable to the public or to anything other than themselves. They can kind of do what they want. Let's look at this. Google, Tesla, Apple, and Facebook rake in massive subsidies. Amazon's search for a second headquarters has produced eye-popping revelations about the subsidies and other benefits cities across America are offering to a company worth some $820 billion. But major firms in Silicon Valley have been quietly hauling in subsidies worth hundreds of millions of dollars to each company, and in one case directly robbing. Oh my God. Are they going to take it away from me? Yeah, they're going to take it away from me. Okay, we're back. In one case, directly robbing. Wait, okay. Okay, so back to the story here. But major firms in Silicon Valley have been quietly hauling in subsidies worth hundreds of millions of dollars. No, they're not going to let me read it. Anyway, you get the point. This is why news is so broken. This is garbage. But the headline is there, and I'm sure that the data is there to back it up. I don't have to look it all up right now. But the idea that these companies don't have to be accountable to the government or to the people because they're private companies, okay, then you don't get government subsidies if you're unaccountable to the people and the government. Because if you're taking hundreds of billions of dollars in government subsidies, you're definitely accountable. I mean, that's our money. That's the people's money. So I think there's an argument to be made that, that's what I would shoot back if someone said, oh, well, these companies don't need to be accountable because they're private companies. Yeah, if they take government subsidies, if they're getting money from the government, yeah, they do need to be accountable because all of these companies are taking money from the government too. Pharma companies, military industrial complex companies, big tech now to censor speech and to help contribute. And then the mainstream media, one of the things Russell Brand, it was so funny that they're trying to take down his rebuttals to some of this stuff that he's posting. He said something about the Trusted News Initiative, which if you go back to some of my old episodes, I've talked about actually, and I heard it again from Jimmy from an interview he did with Dr. Robert Malone, where he talked about the consolidation of this. And then he talked about how his LinkedIn profile was taken down because he posted something about how the CEO of Thomson Reuters is on the board at Pfizer. And this is public data. You can look it up. I believe he still is. I forget his name. It's James something. But basically the CEO of Thomson Reuters, and the way that they dress up the language is interesting because they try to make it look like he's not really the CEO of Thomson Reuters. He's the CEO of like the Thomson Reuters Foundation or something that gives to charity, but it's all the same umbrella. It's all under the same umbrella. And it's interesting the parallels here to I had this thought process today about the argument basically to protect us, to the argument for censoring someone like a Russell Brand or censoring Julian Assange's information or basically censoring information. The argument is like, hey guys, the internet is a scary place and there's a lot of bad people out there saying a lot of bad things. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a big brother to look out for us on the internet? Wouldn't it be nice, y'all, if we just had a big brother to protect us while we're out there online from all the bad people and bad information, the Russell Brands of the world? I really do wish we had a big brother to look out for us, to kind of, make us feel safe and coddle us when the Russell Brands of the world say things that hurt our feelings. Boy, I sure wish we had a big brother, don't you? That's the what I hear from these people that are advocating for the censorship of speech, and they get it. I think they touch on this a little bit. Like, let's keep watching this clip here because they get into the difference between the EU and the USA when it comes to these issues and why this is able to be done to someone like Russell Brand, and they may have a little bit more difficult of a time doing it to someone like Tucker Carlson or Jimmy Dore, but believe me, they'll do it.
Yeah.
Then no one makes money on
Well,
it.
let's say,
just take them off
say
your
if they
platform.
weren't making money, if they weren't running ads, could it be legal to demonetize this person because you don't like them and let that person make money?
That's discrimination. That should be somehow considered a discriminatory
Everybody signed
somehow.
on for this. Everybody thought it was great. That's what cancel culture was the whole time, was a way to make your company like you have rights in America, but you're also a citizen of Google. And Google, you have different rights.
Right.
And everybody just signed on for that because they were so eager to get it their parasocial enemies.
Well, I'd
Even
like
if
to
they've
know
completely demonetized him, even if they're not making any money off the ads, they're still getting traffic from him.
Oh yeah.
So they're getting the
Exactly.
eyeballs to the platform, and then what do? They recommend all these other videos to you after you watch one of his.
That's such a great point Kim makes there. Even with YouTube and Google, like virtue signaling by saying, oh yeah, we took all the ads off, they're not deplatforming him, but they're still using him because guarantee you, people are looking for Russell Brand's content. This is another reason I think it's good. This is a good thing that this is happening because I think it's going to make it's actually going to help Russell Brand at the end. You know what I mean? It's going to help him grow his audience because people are going to go like, oh, wow, this guy's over the target. Maybe I should look at what he's saying. Maybe I should go watch some of his videos. And he's directing. And thank God Rumble is actually there. So they provide kind of an alternative viewpoint. Even if YouTube is able to censor him, he's still got that Rumble channel that he can route people to defend himself through. It's not like a situation where with like Michael Jackson, who when they made that documentary defaming him and saying all these, the kids who basically testified in court when they were younger that Michael didn't do anything to them are now making this documentary and suing his estate for money, a part that they left out of that documentary. But Michael's not allowed to defend himself. He's not alive to defend himself from that stuff. In this case, at the very least, Russell Brand can retaliate through the media. And so, at least that is there. And he's a savvy media guy. He's from the media. He's an actor and someone who's been in film and who's been doing this for a long time. So at the very least, we have that still. But, even that's deteriorating. And she makes the greatest point that YouTube's virtue signaling and pearl clutching over this is completely fake, because they're still going to benefit from it because people are going to be looking for Russell's content, and then YouTube can serve them recommendations for other videos that they do monetize.
They then can make money off of. So even if they're totally taking ads off of his current content, which they might be for a little while. They're still making money off of him by simply having that big of a person on their platform. If they don't want him, if they're wanting to be moral and say, well, we just don't even want to support this type of person because we don't like him, take him off the platform completely. Actually put your money where your mouth is on that, but they're not willing to do that.
Yeah. And I think that would be illegal too, because then they have to play even across the board. I mean, we have Section 230 of the NDAA, which says you can only act as a platform, not a publisher. You can't pick winners or losers.
Yeah, right. That's directly violating.
Yeah. And then also just if you even just not even pay attention to that, the public easements. They use our satellites, our roads, our property to run their lines. They've entered into a contract with the United States citizens, which means they have to honor our laws, including the.
Do you remember when in the Obama-Romney campaign? I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but there was a big debate because was it Elizabeth Warren or Obama who said, you didn't build that? And Romney tried to seize on that as like, oh, that's so terrible that you said that these entrepreneurs didn't build their companies. Because I think it was Warren who said, and I don't know if she was, I don't remember the exact context, to be honest. I just remember there was a debate over, and maybe someone can help me with that. But I just remember this debate over, you didn't build that. And the Republican side was like, how terrible. They were like pearl clutching that, like, how terrible Obama and Elizabeth Warren would insinuate that if you made a business, you didn't build it. And that's not what they were saying. What they were saying is, you didn't build it on your own. You use the infrastructure that the United States provided. Like if you have a business that ships things, you use the roads, you use the airways, you use the ports that the United States has in place for you, that the taxpayers fund. So the point, and then you have workers that work for you that help make that vision a reality. So that was the point they were making. It was a nuanced point, and it was a good point that, like, hey, yeah, business is great. Like, that all that stuff is cool, and it's great to be successful if you come up with something that's actually helping people, and you're not just a leech or a vampire sucking blood out of the earth. But the point was that you didn't build that yourself. You have to remember that a lot of people contributed to help you, and there are a lot of different factors at play in your success. Jeff Bezos, like, yeah, it's great that you made Amazon, and your parents gave you a loan, and you kind of came from wealthy means, and you really, but by the same token, Jeff Bezos, you're a fucking genius. Like, the stuff that Jeff Bezos has done and the business moves he's made, you have to admit are completely genius. He shaped the world, much like Google did 20 years ago. Jeff Bezos has shaped the world the current world we live in, with Amazon and Whole Foods and, Amazon Prime and all the stuff that Amazon, the e-commerce, you can order something in 2 hours from now, it'll be at your door. That's pretty cool. And the infrastructure for that is not all Jeff Bezos, right? Like, for him to make that a reality, he has to use taxpayer funded roads and, the United States Airways and the United States taxpayer funded ports and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a good point. Anyway, I got way off track there. You didn't build that.
The First Amendment, which is freedom of speech. Let's get into this really quickly, and we'll just jump and get a little bit more opinions. Allegations of sexual impropriety and the abuse by comedian and podcaster Russell Brand by the British media prompted YouTube to demonetize the star's popular channel on September 20th. The Gray Zone can now reveal that the YouTube's financial censorship of Brand is a result of an effort waged by former British government minister who was responsible for London's crackdown and dissent during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, I knew it.
Wow.
I knew it was, because that's back when it came out. Prince Charles had that extra money and was paying that cutout. They were fresh off Syria propaganda, and it was like they're paying bread tube people to go after.
Oh, I remember that.
The anti-lockdown people.
Yes. Does anybody want to make an opinion about it?
So there you have what Kurt just mentioned, a coordinated effort, a precedent for this. So that what Kurt just mentioned, you can look it up, what he's talking about, where they went after the anti-lockdown people in the UK. This is all well documented. That's the precedent, the table spreading, if you will, the setting for the Russell Brand stuff. And they get into, I love that they touch on why this is much more easy to do in the UK than it is in the US. Listen.
this real quick. The fact that right off the jump that a government official is telling a social media
I was like
platform.
that. Well, I mean,
This is Big Brother shit over here. This is
Yeah.
1984.
Good work by Kit Clarenberg. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
I know. Well, I mean, they got a hold of the letter, right? And they saw the letter. But your thoughts on a government, because I heard you talk about this, a government telling a social media platform, I mean, this should be really scary stuff. And my other question that I didn't get a chance to ask is, all right, we know what the problem is. We know what's going on. We identified that it's wrong. How the hell as citizens can we fix this thing? I mean,
go to Rumble.
Knock on the, we'll go to Rumble. We'll talk
You're
about
gonna
that
have
after.
to like look. You have to do nothing but support the places that don't do this, and also somebody's got to like really take this all the way up, probably to the Supreme Court.
Well,
Somebody's
this
gotta,
is the British government, so unfortunately they don't have the First Amendment,
though.
right? But what happened here is you've got a British national, Russell Brand. You have the British government. They don't have the First Amendment. I don't know what they have. What do they have? Like an agreement with the Crown or something like that? I don't know what the British. I don't know what the Brits.
I love that, Kim. You're fucking amazing. So I thought that was so funny because it documents like there's a real difference. I think Americans have a revolutionary spirit. Like we're very rebellious minded. We're like, nah, fuck you. We're not doing it that way. Queen so-and-so, like we're going to dump your tea in the fucking ocean. Fuck off. And I love that joke. She's like, oh, what do they have? Like an agreement with the crown or something? The fucking royal pussies, because that is the truth. We're the fucking rogue children of the empire. The United States is the rogue children of the empire, of the British Empire. And now when you see things like this, it's the grasp of the empire kind of reaching back in. And that's why I think I relate to a lot of the libertarian spirit of some of the populist right that have that like, no, fuck you. And even though I strongly believe that things need to be done about guns, like we need better, more coherent regulations, because to me that's a commerce issue, not a freedom issue. Like we're not trying to take your guns away, but they need to be more closely regulated like a car would. And if you want like a military weapon that murders tons of people, you can have it, but you need a special license for that. That's my take on that. But I'm also much more open-minded about the Second Amendment, seeing what's occurred over the last couple of years. And I understand the libertarian standpoint of, no, you're not fucking taking my guns. I definitely understand it a lot more than I did a couple of years ago. So, but again, I say all of that just to illustrate the American spirit, a spirit that is deeply American, a revolutionary, rebellious spirit. We are the rebel children of the fucking empire. And now the empire is creeping back in.
Slightly as the
we have a
queen.
deal with the crown.
So I don't know what they can actually do about this. And maybe you've got U.S. government officials, I'm sure, doing deals with the UK Parliament saying, hey, why don't you guys take this on? Because we're getting in trouble with First Amendment.
Yeah,
because
they collude.
Right. So now our government is actually in trouble with the courts because of censorship. And so now they're having the British do the dirty work, saying, well, you guys don't even have a First Amendment. So go ahead and.
See, and when you hear stuff like this, I have to admit, despite all the problems our system has, and it does have a lot, there's still that glimmer of hope in the American justice system. Just that little tiny kernel of gleam, like what she just said right there. The government is getting in trouble in the courts here because we have a justice system of due process that vets these things against the Constitution and goes, hey, this is a violation of the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. They don't have that in the UK. They have a court system that'll hang people like Russell Brand out to dry for sexual assault accusations.
And
not to be pious, America's every bit as bad, if not worse, than the UK. So,
and tackle this, because if the U.S. government were to do this would be a violation of the First Amendment. To have a government tell a platform, take this person off, even though this person has committed no crime at this point. He's not been convicted, so we can say he's innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, but if you ever watch any of the hearings when they whisk the lords of the underground, the head of YouTube or the head of Elon Musk or Facebook, whatnot, the Congress on both sides of the aisle are both pushing for censorship. Now, the conservative part, they're pushing the old rhinos, the old establishment conservatives. They want China stuff and
Right.
You know what? I will say this because I've seen this in my TikTok comments. There are conservatives pushing for censorship, but it's not a government type of censorship. It's a religious, moral type of censorship. There was I covered this whole thing about Lady Gaga a while back, right? And so Lady Gaga did this bit where at a concert, and she did this a long time ago, where she had this woman who was a vomit artist who drinks like colored goop and pukes it up. Like that's her art, and it's disgusting. And it's, it's offensive to like civil people or whatever. But to me, it's beautiful because it's like interesting and unique. And so that's where the conservatives are like, no, this is a moral outrage. The conservatives will hold something like that up as like, this is Sodom and Gomorrah shit that needs to be stopped. And we need to get back to Jesus and values like that. That's their piety. And that's where they're wrong. It's like, great. You don't like it. Don't let your kids watch it. Don't listen to it. It's none of your business what consenting adults do. If I want to watch Lady Gaga be puked on by a hot young British woman, I can watch that. And it may turn me on a little bit, and that's not wrong. Maybe it is wrong. I don't know. But I should have that freedom to be slightly titillated by women puking on each other, just as you have that freedom to not watch it or shield your children's eyes from it. Okay? So that's the point I'm getting at here is let's not get out of hand, folks. Like, we can't be censoring government criticism or Lady Gaga being puked on by hot young British women in scantily clad British women
stuff and Palestinian.
And then
they want all them.
Yours. They want that as the front to take yours away. And at least they want to put up a front of a foreign threat.
The left, people like AOC will openly say, see, deplatforming works, that we need to, it's violence, right? We got to stop the violence. Yep. So they do have the same type of behaviors. Maybe they're not doing this directly like this way, but it's the same type of behavior by both sides. I mean, the West in general does this stuff. In Australia, they were doing this. In New Zealand, they were doing this. The censorship, the lockdowns, everything that's going on. The Five Eyes countries, they do this all the time.
I do think it's a little worse right now on the left, though. I do think that the liberals and the Democrats are going harder.
1,000%.
Yeah.
I think it's time we bring in Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann, what do you think about that?
Now, I'll confess that I have licked Joe Biden's dick all the way through since 1975.
Okay, thanks, Keith.
Both sides do it, but they're doing it more. Back when I was a kid, I feel like I grew up in conservative Idaho, so I feel like conservatives were the ones who were wanting to silence people for having alternative lifestyles, or if you didn't believe in God, they'd want to censor you.
They were burning the Harry Potters back in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't that a hilarious turn when it went from them to
witchcraft?
They're burning Harry Potter for witchcraft, and later it was like leftists burning Harry Potter. Like either way, it's getting
now
burned.
They love Harry Potter because of J.K. Rowling is now
the conservatives
because she's all about women.
So this goes back to my original point about how you can't live in the headspace of left, right, liberal, conservative anymore because those labels are meaningless. They're clearly meaningless. 10 years ago, it was the conservatives and the right who were vehemently anti-war, and you were a pro-Saddam terrorist if you didn't support the war, and that dynamic has completely flipped to where now it's the quote unquote left who's you're pro-Putin stooge, who's pro-Russia if you don't support the Ukraine dumping billions of dollars into Ukraine, and we need to censor any people who say otherwise. And it's the conservatives who are saying no, you're going too far. We got it. So it's literally just the same shit on a different plate. Basically, a shit sandwich on a blue plate, or do you want your shit sandwich on a red plate? That's American politics, summed up by yours truly.
Well, I mean, I'll say this much too as well. The left that's kind of pushing this right now, right? It's completely different. It's once again protecting people. There's a small group of conservatives, the libertarian-minded people, the Thomas Masseys, the Rand Pauls. So you do have these pockets of people who don't want that censorship.
Well, this
they
ain't
do
the
want
same.
some freedom of speech.
Now this is like state crafted. Like this isn't like some grassroots thing.
Yeah.
Okay. They didn't come forward. A media apparatus owned by somebody got paid by somebody as a favor. This is like way beyond whatever it was like 7 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's way beyond
After
in my
lockdowns.
lifetime ever. I've never seen it like this. Me and my mother were just talking. She's like, "What's going on in this country? We used to be freedom of speech." So I know a lot of people, the older generation, they're even shocked to what's going on. I'm like, well,
And we'll end on that. That right there is why I believe that this is actually a good thing. What's happening to Russell Brand? I really think it's a good thing because it's bringing people around to the reality that, hey, right and left are meaningless. Because 10 years ago, the people who were against the war were the left. And now that dynamic has completely flipped. And it's the same on so many things. And now you have, to me, what is clear more than anything, and I'll end on this thought before I take a break and go grab another cup of coffee. But to me, what's clear is the consulting class, the people who make a living doing political consulting and PR and all those kind of things, have quietly moved to the Democratic side because that's where the money happened to be under Obama. This transition, this is what Obama's great magic trick was. He's Dick Cheney's cousin, first of all. Look it up. He's Dick Cheney's cousin. Look it up. Obama's related to Dick Cheney, but Obama's greatest trick was the veneer of public relations, wokeism, whatever you want to call it. Like that's the new term for it. I would call it, basically like almost like the diversification of the military industrial complex. So it's kind of went like, okay, we can keep this charade up as long as we start accepting, black people and gay people and Muslims into the military industrial complex as a thing. We can't be all white. Once we diversify it, then we can keep this grift going. And that's what Obama was a complete champion for. He was the guy who, like, we all smiled and patted ourselves on the back and like, look how great we are. We elected a black president. And then he did the exact same things politically that George Bush and Dick Cheney did. He escalated what they did under the guise of like, look how awesome we are. Let's pat ourselves. We got a black president, guys. Hey, look, isn't that awesome? Because politics has been degenerated into this thing where it's pro wrestling, it's entertainment for a reason. That's why we're all in these tribes and everything's about social issues and everything, because we don't focus on the actual core policy. And it's easy for like I'll use this example of the Rage Against the War Machine rally a few months ago. Instead of looking at the issue itself of like, hey, this is where we're needlessly prolonging a war that is killing people so that our contractors can sell weapons. Let's band together on that and be against it. You get these divisive people like the eclectic radical guy, the biggest like douchebag. If this guy's not an op, he's like one of the biggest dumb fuck douchebags alive. And cheers to you. I still love you, man. I just know that you're either a grifter or a complete op, because you only pop up. These guys only pop up to be divisive when the populist left and right starts to unite, to call people racists, to call people Nazis, to basically pearl clutch and bring identity politics into an issue that doesn't really need to have identity politics. The clarity is, are you against this war or are you for it? And that's all that should matter. I don't care if the guy next to me at the anti-war march is a fucking Black Panther or a neo-Nazi. As long as we're on the same page with war, that's all that matters. Everything else he does, in another forum on another issue, maybe we're different and I'll oppose him on that. But people can't do that. America can't do nuance, especially the left cannot do nuance. And we allow these dividers, the eclectic radical fuckheads, to come into the mix and go, oh, like, I'm not going to this rally because that guy wore a thing that I don't like. Blah, blah. And you're like, oh, yeah, he wore a thing that we don't like. Oh, we're going to go hide over here and insulate ourselves inside our padded liberal world where people only say things that we like and make us feel good. That's today's left. So Anyway, now I'm pissed off and I need another cup of coffee. I will be back in just a second after I load up. I need to add a clip of this. I need to fix some things, but I'll be right back. And we're back. So I don't want to be a broken record here, but I want to stick with this Russell Brand theme for just a little bit longer because, like I said, I think it's a big deal for a couple reasons. One, because of the magnitude of what's happening. Someone is again being completely removed and from public dialogue for accusations, and also because, like I said, I think it's a good thing in the long term, because of it's bringing attention and it's to this issue, and it's showing people how ridiculously out of hand it's gotten. So in this next clip I had lined up is Max Blumenthal on Rising talking to Brianna Joy Gray, and I think I kind of came in near the end, so let's go in. We'll go in like a little bit.
Basis of whether or not some
Okay.
substantive difference between almost an employee-employee relationship, the way you get when you're using Uber as a driver or when you're monetizing your content on YouTube, and them saying, well, we're no longer going to allow you to make money on this app through us, versus access to a banking system or access to a speech platform or access to using the telephone line in your house or an internet service or something that feels more like a broadly available utility that shouldn't be stripped from you on the basis of whether or not some impartial public figure thinks that you're a good or a bad person. Isn't that a meaningful difference?
Okay,
This
so
is a camera.
1 second here. I like Brie's kind of posture in this interview because she takes a devil's advocate standpoint. I don't know that she necessarily believes these things, but she's asking questions that I think are good questions to ask, because people like Max should have the answers to them. So let's see.
We both oppose civil asset forfeiture, in which accused drug dealers have all of their assets seized by the federal government in a completely authoritarian fashion, often without due process. And sometimes they're guilty of dealing drugs, but I would argue.
I agree, but is that the right analogy though, Max? Like, let's just take
it's not the right. Well, here's the point. That's something that happens in the public realm, and they supposedly get their day in court. But more and more people are forced to rely on an entirely privatized system, whether it's GoFundMe or YouTube, in order to earn a living because they are content creators. That's the way that people are going to deliver. Their audience wants to deliver them support. And if they are removed and demonetized from there, they're essentially financially sanctioned. I work with someone who's been removed, our managing editor at the Gray Zone, Wyatt Reed, from PayPal and Venmo for no reason other than that he was reporting from the Russian separatist side of the Ukrainian conflict. I have several colleagues in the media who've been removed from PayPal, Venmo. They're getting kicked off TikTok. And slowly you can see as they get removed from these platforms, it's becoming harder and harder for them to earn a living. And that is precisely the point. And the state can't be held accountable the same way it can through civil asset forfeiture, because it's doing it from behind the scenes. We don't know who made the decision to buy YouTube, or who prompted YouTube to make that decision. All we know is that it's incredibly coordinated. And we
know how it happened with Rumble, though. And because of the letter that came out from Rumble, so I think it's safe to assume the same person is the one who reached out to the other platforms. Maybe that's a stupid assumption to make. I don't think so. There's evidence for it. The guy from Rumble posted it. So
should consider the fact that the Times of London that led this story has targeted so many dissidents over the years, and that the Times of London is a favorite publication for the MI5, MI6 to plant material. So what I'm saying, Brianna, is that the state now has the convenience of removing people from being able to earn a living, or from public view, canceling them and so on, without putting its fingerprints on it. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening with Russell Brand. I'm using his case to make a larger point.
Yeah,
we
I
don't
completely
know that yet. See, again, I think Brie has to play devil's advocate here, but we do know that, Brie.
take that could be the case and that should be investigated. But I'm just trying to get to the bottom of what we do know right now. Go ahead.
And it's a little bit different. I mean, what disturbs me about this specifically with Russell Brand is that on the social media platforms, they have speech-related policies. We disagree with a lot of those policies. The show has been a victim of those policies in ways I don't agree with. But when they deplatform Alex Jones, you can maybe disagree with that, but it's at least related to this potentially defamatory speech.
Alex Jones actually went through a court. Like he went to court and lost. So there was a court decision behind Alex Jones. That's, as much as I disagree with Alex Jones' continual deplatforming, I do believe that his case of all of them was handled with the most, I guess, deliberation or diplomacy, or what's the word? Due process. Really, he went through court. They actually kicked him off platforms once the verdict came through in court that he was guilty of defamation or whatever they eventually found him guilty of, because he ended up having to being court ordered to pay a fine to the victims of the Sandy Hook families that suffered from his fucking shit. So I his fucking shit. I eloquently put, his fucking shit.
The content he's producing on the platform. What I find so disturbing here is Russell Brand is being punished for content that may very well be bad. I guess it could very well even be criminal, but does not have anything to do with the.
So I think Robbie misspoke here. I think what he meant to say was behavior, not content. But listen to what he says again.
Very well be bad. I guess it could very well even be criminal, but. What I find so disturbing here is Russell Brand is being punished for
behavior,
content that may very well be bad. I guess it could very well even be criminal, but does not have anything to do with the content or the speech being posted on the platform, which gets into this whole, we have to go back and we have to destroy works of art or throw away DVDs of that Harvey Weinstein happened to produce, even though there's tons of other creative people involved in it who are upstanding until maybe they're not. And then we have to get rid of their things. That's the creepy part of this to me.
Well, I mean, he's not being demonetized.
No, do you remember? Let me go back a little bit again. Do you remember Eric Clapton? What happened to Eric Clapton? Eric Clapton came out and expressed some hesitancy to the meow, and basically said that he had injuries from the meow. And after that, he was suddenly a racist. They dug up some footage of him saying some kind of racist shit at a show, which when I saw the footage, I was even like, okay, you don't just get drunk and all of a sudden become a racist, and who knows? In that time, the stuff that he could have been misled. Maybe he was reading some bullshit from someone. See, that's the thing that people, it's so easy to find something now from someone's past that's regrettable, because everyone's done something that's regrettable, and use it as ammunition to get them removed for other reasons. And that's clearly what's happening with Russell Brand. And so I think it's good that it's happening because people now see it clearly, you know.
Is for his content. His content supposedly adheres to YouTube's stated terms of service. I hadn't heard of this off-platform behavior, and YouTube has appointed itself the jury. It gets to be the jury because our digital commons are completely privatized. None of these charges have been adjudicated. He may be guilty.
So
and
Max said something right there that I think is really important. Our digital commons are completely privatized. I don't want to go on a conspiracy rant here, but COVID was a trial run for a world in which we exist in our homes and interact almost completely through the internet, through Zoom, through social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And if that's the case, if we start having these pandemic cycles where it's like, all right, we got to go on lockdown now, and everything you do is through social media, think of how much power there is in controlling that ecosystem completely and being able to squash any dissenting viewpoints from it. Just think about that for a minute. You know, that's the context that people forget when it comes to this type of stuff. Is like, oh, it's just the internet, it's fine.
Another point worth considering. Let's say Russell Brand is totally guilty of everything. Let's say it's even worse than that. Let's say he's like Leatherface and he's throwing women on meat hooks in a hellhole in some rural county in Texas. Millions and millions of people will still not believe that that is true because the media, and specifically the Times of London and the Murdoch media, has lied them into so many disastrous situations. They lied about Jeremy Corbyn, the labor leader, being an anti-Semite day in and day out. They lied the public into the Iraq war. They lied about
and again, that's the thing I want to focus on here is the precedent. There is a precedent here that people have to remember. You know, this is a thing that works effectively all the time. Just smear them as a sex person, as a sex crime, because everyone has done stuff sexually that was awkward or embarrassing or regrettable. If you've been out there in the dating world and you've fucked people beyond one or two, you've no doubt done something you regret or something embarrassing, especially if you drink or do drugs. And I think that's something a lot of people can relate to, frankly, which is why this Hunter Biden stuff doesn't have as much teeth as the Republicans want it to, because a lot of people see themselves in Hunter Biden, I'm sure. The fucked up, stupid ass parents. Like, you're like, fuck this. And you just do drugs and fucking like, fuck everything. That's how I kind of see Hunter Biden. Like, I can kind of relate to him a little bit. Like, I have a dad who's a piece of shit, you know, who fucking, you know, is imperfect. I shouldn't say a piece of shit, but no one's perfect. You know, I'm a piece of shit in my own right. So I don't want to go too far down that wormhole. But I think that's the context you have to view this through is, yes, someone like Russell Brand, who has a body count of an actor, a famous actor who was a decent looking dude, of course you're going to be able to dig up some people that have issues with something and kind of like turn that into a documentary if you want to smear someone and make them look like some kind of sex criminal.
Omar Gaddafi giving his troops Viagra. They lied about Syrian chemical attacks to trigger Western intervention there. They lie day in and day out. Charlotte Wace, the lead reporter on the Russell Brand story, destroyed the life of a beautician in England, falsely claiming she was destroying women's faces with rogue Botox treatments. When the Times of London was proven false, they still went to court and fought this poor woman's libel case anyway, tooth and nail. It destroyed her life. It destroyed her son's mental fitness. And that's the Times of London. They went after so many dissidents that I know with front page stories in over arcane themes that seem kind of irrelevant to the public, but which threatened the British intelligence services and British financial interests. And so the public will not believe anything about Russell Brand because of the way that the mainstream media has conducted itself. And
because they have a reputation that makes them not believable. How could you blame people for seeing it through that lens? These people are not credible. Why would we afford them credibility? Why are we affording people credibility who led us into the Iraq war still to this day? You know, we're still affording, and now we have a whole group of other fakes being exposed by the Ukraine thing. Now, Keith Olbermann, Rachel Maddow, these people who I once thought as bastions of trustworthiness are now proven to be just as fake as Bill O'Reilly and their conservative counterparts and Sean Hannity. You know, Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow are the Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity of their cults. They're their own special, you know, they speak to the insulated members of their cult, the people who want their personal opinions reflected back at them. And I think, you know, for all the negative aspects of the current bullshit facade of war that we have, that's one of the byproducts of it that I'll look at with you know, optimism is, hey, at least now I know that Rachel Maddow and Keith Olbermann and Anderson Cooper and all the quote unquote news people that we thought were legitimate on the left are complete fucking fakes as well. So thanks Ukraine for helping us expose that reality. Anyway, let's listen to Max and Brie go at it a little bit more.
That's what needs to be considered here. The mainstream media has indeed proven itself an enemy of the people.
Max, let's play that thought experiment that you opened up there.
Max Blumenthal sounded like Donald Trump out here. Holy shit. The reality is, I was thinking about this the other day. Holy shit, Trump was right. I was thinking about that exact quote the other day and thinking, fuck me, Trump was ahead of the goddamn curve. He was right. The press is the enemy of the people. Look at the fucking shit that they're leading us into. Look at the pandemic. That's the best example.
Out a little bit. I completely take your point that the media has made itself untrustworthy, but there are aspects of these allegations that Russell Brand has admitted to.
And here's Brie's like, she's got to push back. And listen, people talk shit about Brie. People hate on Brie. I think Brie is one of the few still honest people in this space, and I still respect her. I might not always agree with her, and I think the pushback she's doing here is warranted because first of all, it makes the conversation interesting, and that's her job. Her job is to be adversarial as a journalist. So fuck the haters. Brie does a great job.
In his books as part of his rehabilitation process. And so there's a separate conversation that I think needs to be had about what it means to be rehabilitated, whether or not there's anything that someone like Russell Brand or anybody else who has admitted to being misogynistic and be in the past and being embarrassed about their past behavior can do to really make amends to their victims and move forward. But taking your thought experiment, even if it is true, the media has discredited itself, that's fine. But if it is true, what do you think is a reasonable and responsible response from a institution like Google or anyone else? And what should the response be from viewers if people do find, even if it's not illegal, it to be distasteful for him to have had this relationship with a 16-year-old or the like? What?
My take is for them to mind their own fucking business until a court decision comes down. Because until a court decision comes down, it's just people fucking talking. That's my take. Let's see what Max says.
What would be appropriate? Would it be appropriate for Google, or let's say, again, in the analogy, Uber, to say, you can no longer drive my cars through me, you can no longer monetize yourself on my app because you engaged in a relationship with a 16-year-old, or you were...
Now, keep in mind, this is just external allegations. If someone in Uber is like harassing customers or doing something like that, I'm 100% for them being cut. This has nothing to do with Russell violating YouTube's policies. This is him being cut off from YouTube for doing something externally that they find offensive or they believe is offensive. And that's a scary precedent to set because it makes anyone cancelable. Like I said, if you have any kind of body count in your history, you definitely have an embarrassing or regrettable sexual experience that could be weaponized against you at some point.
Coercive, or did some of the things that she accused of him, like removing a condom in the midst of a sexual intercourse without her consent, those kinds of things.
Which Julian Assange was accused of doing that.
Exactly.
And he's been cleared of all rape charges, but it was the rape charges that were used to basically hole him up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, make him a de facto prisoner. So it's impossible to. We're responding to a situation. We're responding to a situation or a scenario that's been manufactured by interests that are completely hostile to having any reasonable response.
See, Max, my response would be that so go ahead. I would say that
YouTube has created a scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you go ahead.
I'm sorry, there's a bit of a delay, it seems. I was going to say that my response to the Julian Assange example would be, even if all of the allegations were true, which they weren't, but even if all of the allegations were true, that means absolutely nothing about the value of his disclosures, right? That means absolutely nothing about the value of WikiLeaks.
Yes.
And I would similarly understand an argument like that about Russell Brand.
Yes.
The things that he's talking about, the truth to power, the content of
See,
the
that
show
was way
is
the
still
fuck out of
valuable
left
to
field. You
people.
did not expect that. The way she keeps stepping on Max.
Regardless of whether or not these allegations are true. I think that's a fundamentally ethical position to take. But I do think that what some people are bristling about is a failure to acknowledge that, yes, it would be bad if some of this stuff is true and that it might be worth investigating, even if we shouldn't rush to judgment.
No one's bristling about that, Brie. We want to investigate. I'm saying give the guy due process. If these are legitimate claims, let's see the evidence. Let's see a court decision. Until then, it is just people talking.
Well, that's an ethical question. It's not a question for YouTube because YouTube clearly is distorted on a gargantuan scale from an ethical point of view. As I pointed out, they are hosting people who have committed titanic crimes on their platform and allow them to monetize. So what they've done is highlight the contradictions and set up a scenario where pretty much anyone can be demonetized if they're accused of something. And we both know, even we personally know people in the alternative media world who've been falsely accused of these things. I mean, I could point to a Jordan Chariton. I mean, he attacks me constantly to get attention, but I don't mind pointing out that he was falsely accused in a horrific way, lost his job, and really had his.
There you go. There you go. That is called having principles, my friends. Max is no friend of Jordan Chariton, and here he is standing up for Jordan based on principle, because Jordan was falsely accused by some bullshit. And they do that. Like, look at the Johnny Depp thing. Okay. I mean, you can say what you want about Johnny Depp. I didn't watch the trial, but I know this one thing to be true. And I think this is the one thing that I'll tell people that made me come down on the Johnny Depp side. If you look at Johnny Depp's personal history and Amber Heard's personal history, there was evidence that Amber Heard, one of her former mates, a lesbian, a former lesbian lover, a partner of hers, came forward, and there was police reports of domestic disputes that they had where Amber Heard got violent and vindictive with her former lover. When you go to Johnny Depp's family, his wife and kids, his ex-wife and kids, they would all say, yeah, my dad does drugs and drinks, but he never hit anyone. He never hit any of us, any of that kind of stuff. So all this kind of thing has to be taken into account. And I think it also has to be said that there are definitely a couple of women that I've seen on Twitter that have come forward about Russell Brand and said that they were approached by the Times and their story was not sufficiently negative, so that they were kind of kept out of the conversation. So that's another thing that the media likes to do here, is they lie by omission. Instead of showing you the complete picture, which is, hey, here's how the story probably actually went. We talked to 90 women that Russell Brand slept with over his career. We found 4 of them that had complaints. So that's like out of 100%, that's like 5% had some issues. The other 95% were fine with everything that happened. So when you look at it through that lens, and then all of these claims are made within the context of actual consensual relationships, even the one with the 16-year-old girl, which is, again, something that's probably embarrassing and regretful to Russell, but 16 is the age of consent in the UK. So it's completely legal, and the woman was consensual. And is there a power dynamic at play? I think he was 30 at the time and she was 16. Of course there is. A man that has that much seniority over a woman definitely has a power, of experience and knowledge. But the same could be said of a 30-year-old woman who's sleeping with a 16-year-old male, but that gets celebrated as, yeah, you go girl, cougar. And I do think there's a double standard in that respect. And if women want equality, you have to look at these situations through those lenses, because if we're truly equal, then one of those shouldn't be a problem, and neither should the other. As long as the relationships are consensual and they're not, of a statutory basis, it's none of your business, really. And that's what they're doing with these accusations, is they're digging into the nuance of some of the relationships he had. You know, they went out and cherry picked the ones that had some issues and then puffed up the issues and dramatized them to, you know, target this guy. And more than anything, I think this brings validity to the content he's producing, doesn't it? I mean, you know that he's obviously doing something that's upsetting people when they have to go to this length to try and make him to basically character assassinate the guy. Anyway, let's keep listening to this for a minute.
His career
his
destroyed.
channel. He
I promise we'll get off this subject next.
is able to monetize his channel. And Barack Obama, the examples that you were giving of all of these world
Well,
leaders
right
who've
now,
committed-
Jordan Chariton, under these rules, would probably be demonetized just by being accused. And so
Great
it's
point.
important for us to demand due process and to call out the contradictions of this completely privatized, state-manipulated digital commons that does not serve us in any way. And that's why so many alternative platforms are being created, which creates another ethical dilemma.
Yeah, I was just trying to make the point that Barack Obama is not, I agree with everything you're saying about him, and that obviously his crimes are worse than any individual crimes that Russell Brand or anybody else could be accused of, but that he does not have a YouTube page, as I understand it, and isn't monetizing anything. And so we don't really have that as a test case.
Right, but Brie at this point is arguing against Max when he just made an analogous case for her in Jordan Chariton.
So again, the thought experiment was,
So we have
if
Bill Clinton, the
true-
Clinton Global Initiative just hosted a parallel diplomatic kind of pay-for-play meeting outside the UN just yesterday.
But Max, that's
Bill
not
Clinton
Bill
has been
Clinton's.
accused by multiple women, and the Clinton Global Initiative and Clinton Foundation are able to monetize on YouTube. I mean,
Right, but-
where are the
but
standards
Max,
here?
Max, we're talking about whether or not a content creator, someone with a website.
I mean, the Obamas had a documentary, right? On they have a documentary, they had a podcast, they don't
but-
exactly.
They have a
have
deal
the
with
equivalent
Netflix. They had
thing,
$100
but
million
they have-
You know, this conversation reminds me of an actual quote from a Megadeth song. What it's like, I don't think it's I don't think it's Dave Mustaine's original thought, but it's something like, if you kill many and you're a conqueror, you kill them all and you're a god. Kill one, you're a murderer. Kill many, you're a conqueror, and kill them all and you're God. You know, I think it's from Captive Honor on the Countdown to Extinction record. Don't quote me on that, but maybe quote me on that or call me out if I'm wrong.
Deal
Right,
with Netflix.
but Netflix hasn't, if we're talking about Netflix taking down Russell Brand versus Netflix taking down Obama, I think that's a fair comparison. But I'm asking about this YouTube. I'm specifically asking about this YouTube policy because it is difficult to ascertain. I'm legitimately trying to ascertain how much this is a deviation from their standard practice by finding analogous cases.
And he just gave you one, Brie, and Jordan Chariton. Jordan Chariton's still monetizing on YouTube, if I'm correct.
You don't have powerful people coming to YouTube or Google and telling them you need to remove this person because they have been accused of serious crimes. When it comes,
and so I think the point Max is trying to make is that people who are guilty of way more serious crime than Russell Brand are allowed to walk freely because of their positions of power.
To Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush.
But
And
again,
so
Max,
it's
let's be
obvious to the
specific.
public why
Russell
certain
Brand
people are
hasn't
being
been
targeted.
removed. Let's be specific here. Russell Brand hasn't been removed. The issue is that he's been demonetized, right?
One of the major dividing lines in our political culture right now is whether you think Donald Trump is being targeted with a quasi-weekly indictment because he threatened the quote-unquote deep state, or because he actually committed heinous crimes that no other president has ever been committed, and that this is worse than Watergate. And I would say that's what the election is going to be decided on. And so the Russell Brand case really fits into that dividing line in our political culture. Do you trust the system or not? And I would argue that most people do not trust the system, but the problem is in the US, they vote with their feet, which means they do not vote at all because they're so checked out of the system. So here's a case where powerful interests are.
He's 100% correct. It's why Donald Trump was able to win an election. That's the thing people don't think about. Donald Trump, because of his celebrity and because of his outsider status, was able to mobilize a lot of people who don't normally vote.
Obviously coming to YouTube to shut down someone who may have actually done horrible things, but they're doing it not because he did those horrible things. This is well known in Hollywood. He's written about it. Everyone knew about his antics. Russell Brand was never shy about it when he attempted to rehabilitate himself. They're doing it because he threatened he's interfering with the objectives of this transatlantic establishment, which has destroyed countries across the world, and who the authors of that destruction are welcomed by those same institutions. David Frum is the toast of Democratic Party elite in Washington, D.C. He's the guy who wrote the notorious lie into George W. Bush's speech that Iraq was involved in an axis of evil with weapons of mass destruction. Dick Cheney is still free to walk around in public. This is a guy who made billions of dollars off an Iraq war that he managed from day one, while possibly even outing a CIA operative, Valerie Plame, which should have been a crime. I mean, everybody sees it in the public that the people who are accused and the people who are demonetized and financially censored or politically censored are the ones that threaten the interests of the worst criminals and propagators of disinformation in our society, who happen to be in control of the social media platforms.
And that, again, brings me back full circle to my point. And that point is that people who are powerful and saying the right things are left, their sexual crimes are defended. You know, Bill Clinton being the greatest example. The same people that are out there canceling Russell Brand stood up for Bill Clinton when he had sexual infidelities. And again, you can weaponize anyone who has any kind of a history, who didn't get married at 16 and stay married for their entire life and monogamous, has an embarrassing sexual experience that can be weaponized against them. So I've already been yapping for an hour and a half. So I want to touch on a couple other quick things here before I log off. The first one is, and this is something I had meant to talk about a while back, but didn't. And that is this journalist from who basically, so a guy like Craig Pasta, who's been hosting Jimmy Dore's show, he was at, and let me change my view here so you can see this a little bit better. So Craig was at the January 6th protests, documenting it for his indie media channel. And so he can tell you that there were a lot of people there who were just, there to document the goings on. And this guy, Stephen Horn, kind of documents, he was one of those people. And of course, he's not getting any coverage in the mainstream press, and this is right-wing media to cover this. But I just want to read you this and kind of go through this real quick, because it's something that I think people on both sides of the aisle, much like the Russell Brand thing, should be looking at and thinking about. This is wrong and horrifying. A journalist who made a documentary on January 6th has been found guilty and will likely spend time in prison. To the left, I promise these precedents will come for you. Good luck eating the elite when they are throwing those exercising their First Amendment rights in prison. Here's Stephen Horn. The jury has returned a guilty verdict on my J6 charges: entering or remaining in a restricted area, disorderly or disruptive conduct in a restricted area, disorderly conduct in a Capitol building, parading, demonstrating, or picketing in the Capitol building. So even Elon Musk is in here like, wow. First of all, this is the first thing I want to ask about these charges. Parading, demonstrating, or picketing in the Capitol building. I thought that was our building. Isn't that a taxpayer-funded building that taxpayers pay for? Because if it is, picketing, demonstrating in it, picketing and demonstrating it should be completely fine. Obviously, you shouldn't be allowed to have weapons there. But that's another point that Jimmy has been making. I think that's again like a great point. Is where were all these people's weapons that were there to overthrow the government? And when did parading, demonstrating, or picketing in the Capitol building become a punishable crime? That is very odd. And it goes back to the point I was making earlier that people who demonstrate and picket, they're scary. Wouldn't it be nice if we just had a big brother to look out for us and protect us from those bad picketers? Oh, wouldn't that be great? So let's dig a little bit deeper into this. I told the same truth to the jury that I posted along with my video on January 7th. I did not enter the Capitol building as part of the protest or for cheap thrills, but to accurately document and record a significant event which was taking place. And here's his statement. I'm not even going to try to read that right now because it's tiny on my screen. And I was in DC today when the Capitol was stormed. This is the full, unedited footage I took. It contains mature content, a few notes about what I witnessed. People in the Capitol were not, by and large, Antifa. If there were Antifa, let's see, I just want to check. This was not a peaceful protest. I saw many instances of pushing against police officers. So it's not even that he's not towing the government line, because he's saying this was not a peaceful protest. I saw many instances of pushing against police officers. I was a little surprised at the lack of property destruction I witnessed compared to some of the left-wing riots. I did not see incident in which a woman was shot by Capitol. ID'd as Ashley Babbitt. I did see a man who appeared to have fallen from some height and was laying on an impoverished wheelchair. Yeah, so anyway, this guy is being prosecuted for reporting this stuff. And it's interesting in the context of the people who just recently said, it's interesting in the context of this, actually. Let me share this. I'm going to have to find it. So there was an article, and I think they covered it on Jimmy Dore, but it was from the New York Post about how the FBI had so many informants, they lost track, and they had to do an audit to figure out how many informants they have. So one of the reasons in my theory head that they could be upset or like going after guys like Stephen Horn, who documented what happened, the goings on at the Capitol, is because he may have footage that identifies agents, FBI agents, doing things that they don't want the public to see. And so that's my theory. I'm not saying that there's any credibility or validity to that theory, but the way that they're prosecuting this guy so hard, it's interesting to me that, and I would bet that that's one of the reasons. I mean, I would guess, I would theorize, let's put it that way. I have no direct knowledge. But anyway, wow. So what I would encourage you to do is in this thread here, and I'll show you this real quick. In this Twitter thread, Homeboy has a link to his raw footage, actually, from so Matt Orfalia right here. Is your raw video recording available anywhere to view? Stephen Horn. Yep, I'll warn you, it's not great quality. It was recorded with the covert camera in my helmet. So I'm going to make sure I'm following this guy. But that is one of those things where it's, again, I think the thread here is First Amendment rights and the revolutionary kind of rebellious spirit that America has. It's at risk here. And when they're putting a guy like this who clearly has there's a clear agenda at play, because this guy did nothing wrong, nothing documentable. They're not accusing him of, shooting anyone or breaking anything. He simply documented occurrences there, and they're putting him away for that, despite raw video evidence to the contrary. I mean, we can go watch this on Rumble, and I'm not going to watch it right now because I don't want to make myself or anyone else sick. But it's a scary precedent when you have the weaponization of kind of the HR department and any kind of claims that might indict someone as to they're basically accusations. You can take someone out with accusations, and then you have a guy who's being put in jail for just simply documenting an event. And it's a scary precedent. It's a scary place that we're at. But again, I think that the Russell Brand thing is a turning point in that people are now going to wake up to the reality that this is no joke. The Twitter files and all the things that they exposed, and this is not this is a serious problem that we all need to really take a hard look at. And I love Max's posture there, because not only did he kind of lay out the case for why the Times has no credibility and the precedent that they have for doing this kind of thing that they're doing to Russell Brand to other people. But also, I think that he made a great point and further established his own credibility by defending Jordan Chariton and pointing to him as an analogous example of similar things happening, to what's happening to Russell Brand. And it's definitely someone that Max has no love for, I'm sure. Like he said, Jordan Chariton is constantly attacking him. So the last thing I want to show you before I log off from morning coffee here is this kind of retrospective of some of the headlines from the Iraq War. And it's just, I think it's a good trip to take down memory lane here, because this is the kind of language that we are getting now on Ukraine. And and it's largely from the same people too. Like, let's look at this. How to choke Iraq. Oh, this is wow. American bombs make Iraq stronger. To stop Iran's bomb is to stop Iran's bomb Iran. Do you remember when McCain was out here singing the Beach Boys, bomb Iran? Bomb North Korea before it's too late. Bombing Iraq isn't enough. So this is the paper of record that has a long history of advocating for bombs. William Crystal and Robert Kagan, the architects of the Iraq War, a couple of them. And now the cheerleaders for the Ukraine war. anyway, this was a pilot episode. I apologize in that I was very unprepared. I will do this next week, and I will be much more prepared, and it'll be better quality content. But it was fun, and this is something, like I said, I get up on Sunday morning and watch these news shows and kind of try to catch up on the week's happenings myself. So it's a natural thing. And I thought, you know what? Why not just jump on a live stream and kind of go through a lot of this stuff on a live stream? So that's what I did today. And I hope that you enjoyed the time. If you jumped on, thank you for doing so. And we'll be back. Another thing is, I am so behind on editing, and I keep saying this week after week, but I'm going to dive into old content. I think the last clip video I posted was me and Willie Bragg's session number 29, and this is episode 38, I believe. So that's almost 10 episodes ago, and I haven't done any clip cuts yet. So that's usually where I get a lot more attention to than I do on the live streams, which I understand. But I'm going to get back into the hustle a little bit more. So watch for that. And if you're paying attention, thank you so much. Encourage anyone who hasn't to like and subscribe. I don't do that a lot, but I feel like the content's good enough that I've kind of slowly built a little bit of a subscriber base over the last few months. And so I feel like that speaks for itself. But I think I could do a better job of just reminding people. I know Katie Halper, she'll be like, yo, if people haven't liked this friggin' stream, we're going to stop talking right now. And I respect that, because, that's in this space, especially the type of conversations we are having. You see what's happening to Russell Brand. You see what's going on in the indie media space. You need all the help you can get. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for sitting down with me if you're doing it. And, take good care of yourselves out there. I will be back Wednesday night as usual. Wednesday night, my one solid night, but we're gonna start doing Sundays and Wednesdays. We'll get a few more of these in the rotation, and I'll get up on my skis a little bit better. And I'm proud of myself. I started doing this at the beginning of this year, just out of my own inspiration and a need to rant about this bullshit and kind of share the garbage that I'm curating or weeding through with people. So I sincerely appreciate anyone who's on board with me, specifically my brother Willie Bragg, who's always kind enough to share out links to my streams on Twitter and stuff. Man, you're such a brother, man. I appreciate you so much, Willie. Anyone that's doing that kind of stuff, I got mad love for it. Thank you so much, my man. And I by the same token, Willie's streams, Willie has way more subscribers than me. He's doing way better. But if you're not subscribing to Willie, get over there and subscribe to his stuff. He's got a new show too with Jimmy Bragland. That's been solid. Check that all out. And thank you, everybody. And I'm gonna go eat another piece of bacon or something. Take care, y'all. Till next time. Till Wednesday. Okay, signing off. I forgot to stop share on my other screen, and anyway, I got mad love for y'all. Take care. This time we're really good. This time I'm really going. I promise.